Evangelion Manifesto.
We open this next episode once again on Ikari on a super secret phone call in his big Kabbalah room. It's a beautiful way to start back-to-back episodes, with this one coming right after we saw Nerve secretly control the Jet Alone launch and sabotage that, and now we have some more shenanigans going on in the background. But before we can learn about these shenanigans, we cut to Misato in a helicopter, this time with Shinji, Toji, and Kensuke. How are they all off of school? I don't really know, but Misato tells us that it's good for them to get out of the mountains, and they're all excited. Toji dubs his hat his new lucky hat, and they're on their way to join this crazy UN fleet that Kensuke starts commenting on. The admiral of this fleet is not super excited to see them, and we get a little hint of a female silhouette as we cut to the group. We cut to the group, and Toji's special hat blows off of his head, and he's chasing it, and then it eventually runs into a red shoe, clearly a woman's shoe, that then stomps on his hat. We hear a female voice introducing herself to Misato, and Misato introduces the group to Asuka, Langley, Soryu. Shirt change. I kind of decided I was going to change shirts later into the series. Okay, for those keeping score, the first shirt was Shinji, and it says "Boys Don't Cry." This shirt is simply Asuka, and it says Asuka. As Misato finishes introducing Asuka and we get the reveal of her character design, there is a breeze that then blows her dress up into her face. And while the camera is from the waist up, we see on the boys' faces that they can see her panties. The title screen appears as we hear the sounds of slapping, and when we cut back to the scene, we see that Shinji and Toji are both red and slapped, and Kensuke's camera lens is broken. Asuka tells the boys that that was the viewing fee, and Toji, who continues to be my favorite character, tells her that the price is too high and gives her change, proceeding to drop his pants and boxers and receive another slap. I mean, how can you not love a character who not only believes in recompense and getting hit when he hits someone unjustly, but also is just so quick-witted to come up with that change line and then just hang dong to finish the joke. On the bridge, Misato and the Admiral are being real passive-aggressive with each other because the Admiral is not going to give Nerve control of anything, and Misato's there to collect the new robot. It's annoying. And then a new character shows up who the Admiral calls Kaji, and Misato drops her documents in frustration, anger. She's got a mixed face, but it ain't happy. We then cut to everyone, and I mean everyone. Misato, the boys, Kaji, and Asuka crammed into an elevator. And if you haven't had the chance to go on one of the battleships or carriers that the US keeps as sort of floating museums and seen how tight and compact everything is to make sure that there's room for everything that has to be on one of these boats, you really have no idea how tiny some of these rooms and hallways can be. So it's hilarious to me that everyone is crammed into one elevator rather than, I don't know, one group go down, elevator come back up, take the next group down. But it does lead to a really hilarious ending of this scene when Asuka and Misato both shout, "Watch where your hand is," and the two that respond are Kaji, who we kind of expected to, and Toji, who just hung dong on the deck of the ship. Later on, the group is in the galley, and for those who are unaware, a galley is a place in a ship where the crew can make food. It's like the kitchen and the dining room kind of all as one. And as I'm explaining this, I'm realizing there's going to be someone who will be like, actually, where people eat is called... You can swab my poop deck. Kaji and Misato are clearly having some sort of beef back and forth where Misato's upset that he's here. And since Shinji's living with Misato, Kaji then asks Shinji if Misato is still wild in bed, which is a wildly inappropriate thing to ask a 14-year-old. And it is a good way to let the audience know that Kaji is this sort of smooth-talking lover boy, and that he and Misato have had a relationship in the past. We then cut to a scene where we find out that Kaji knows that Shinji's sync rates are really high, and he tells Asuka that fact. And so now we've added another question of just who Kaji? Who Kaji? Obviously, we know that Kaji and Misato have some sort of relationship, but he also knows about Shinji's sync rates. So is he someone who's just been in the background the entire time, or has he been overseas the whole time? And if he's overseas, what has he been doing? Who does he work for? Who does he work with? Who Kaji? Learning that Shinji has such a great sync rate, Asuka meets up with him because she wants to show off her robot. We learn that Eva Unit 2 is bright red, and also that it's a production model and no longer a prototype. Which we could understand that Unit 0 was a prototype. It literally said prot or prototype on its shoulder. But Unit 1 doesn't seem like a prototype, and it's defeated angels. So if the prototype is defeating angels, what is the production model going to be able to do? We'll just stash that away under what Eva on our question board as we get explosions and ships are going under. Shinji sees the explosions and knows it's an angel. And with that sly look on Asuka's face, we know exactly what she's thinking. We cut to the Admiral, who can't get a hold of his boats because they're blowing up! And Misato, who knows that she's about to be in control, has just smugness is oozing off of her. We also learn that Kaji knows about AT fields, so who Kaji question gets another little bullet point there, because we were told literally in the last episode that AT fields are supposed to be super secret info. Asuka takes Shinji to a stairwell where she goes down to the lower flight and starts to change, and we get a cute little characterization where Shinji peeks his little head out and she yells at him to stop looking. It's just nice to know that Shinji, among all of his listening and taking orders and trying to learn how to make friends, he is still just like a little boy. Like he is a human boy. It's nice to know. This is like the third time we've seen the plug suits go on, and it's really kind of fascinating the way they're baggy when they throw them on like overalls, and then they hit a button and it just suctions all to them. But we don't see them doing anything that really needs to be sort of high speed, low drag. So the question of why the suit is so tight and not more like a flight suit, I don't know. Maybe it's just tight so that they don't have to deal with any potential G-forces of the Eva flipping around. We'll chalk it up to unknowable for right now. But it would be cool to have clothing that you could hit a button and it just tightens to however tight it needs to be. I also like the little detail that apparently the plug suits are male and female because Shinji is just covering up any bit of his manhood that is potentially being compressed in a weird way. We then cut to Kaji in his room talking to Ikari, and this is the first time that we've been on the other side of one of his super secret phone calls. And Kaji is complaining that there's an angel there. Ikari's letting him know, you've got an Eva and 2 pilots, you'll figure it out. And Ikari wants something, and Kaji's going to try to keep it safe. So we're really adding bullet points to this who Kaji question very quickly. This episode is called Asuka Attacks, but it could just as easily be called Who Kaji. Back in the Eva, we hear Asuka speaking German and going through what we assume to be the checklist of normalcy. And then we hit a point where it stops working, and she starts yelling at Shinji because he's thinking in Japanese and tries to get him to think in German. And so rather than deal with him try to think in German, she decides to switch the starting language to Japanese, which, if you're watching the dub, is English, and you're like, you're speaking English. So she changes the language to Japanese and continues the startup, which means that she can think in Japanese. Misato and the Admiral are fighting over the fact that the Eva's starting up, but I don't know how the Admiral is going to stop an Evangelion. We've seen them tear through all kinds of stuff. And so now we get Eva Unit 2 in its beautiful red and orange color scheme with the cover that was once on top of it, now a cool tattered cape like it's a wandering desert warrior. Unit 2 jumps off of the boat it was currently on just as the angel below the surface destroys that boat, and they begin to hopscotch their way to the carrier because the carrier has the power cable, and we know the batteries on the Evas don't last real long. Asuka grabs her progressive knife, which we've seen Shinji's a couple times, and it kind of has that classic K-bar army knife look to it. However, Asuka's looks like a box cutter, and I love this design. I just think it's really cool that they would make a progressive knife, or I'm guessing is some kind of vibrating blade, and rather than sort of reinvent like a giant knife, they just say, hey, you can replace the blades on a box cutter. Why not just use a box cutter design in order to be able to quickly replace the blades as we need to? It's little things like that where the science fiction has that little level of how would someone actually try to design this that give it that extra little bit of realism. Anyway, back to the fight. The Angel launches out of the water onto the carrier, and we see just how massive this thing is. And I mean, it is ginormous. Unit 2 is barely the size of its head at all, and we've seen these units. They are the size of skyscrapers, so that's a big fish. The Angel sort of wriggles back into the water, and Unit 2 is holding on to it, and we learn quickly that apparently if your Evangelion doesn't have the right outfit, it can't function underwater. Unit 2 just sits there in the water at the very end of its cable, floating like a piece of bait. Meanwhile, back on the deck, we see Kaji in a VTOL. That's jets normally have to fly like planes do, but we have a couple jets that have been designed over the years, like the Harrier, that can actually rotate their engine force so they can take off up and down, VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing. It's really cool the way we've designed some jets to do that. And if you didn't need this description, then Kensuke is probably your favorite character so far. And without any answers to who Kaji, as he flies away, Unit 2 gets bit by the Angel that starts swimming around with it at the end of the power cable. And Toji, again my favorite, and if you've been catching on to some of the metaphors I've been using, comments that this is just like marlin fishing. To which Misato says, of course, fishing, that's gonna be great. And they come up with this idea that they're going to sink 2 of these destroyers so they can go down and they can blast into the mouth of the Angel and destroy its core, and that Unit 2 will just stay as bait, hold on to the mouth, not let the Angel let it go, and then open it up as they're reeling up the Angel, and they can get those ships in the mouth and finally defeat it. So there's our plan. Let's see if we can get it done. They start reeling up Unit 2 and the Angel, and the ships descend towards the mouth, and we realize that even inside the mouth of the Angel, apparently being wet, the Evangelion can't move, which is kind of a weird thing to think about, but that is not stopping our pilots from trying. Shinji is leaned over on Asuka's lap, trying to use the controls the best he can, and Asuka's complaining about how he's too close, stop controlling my Eva, and they're not really working together. Suddenly they kind of kick into gear and decide to make a decision, and the controls do this cool little like unhook thing, so there's like more room for 2 hands to go on each of the sticks. And the 2 of them are now both holding the controls, both thinking, let's get this open, let's get this open, let's get this open, we gotta open the mouth. And suddenly the eyes on Evangelion Unit 2 glow green, and the Eva unit opens up the mouth of the Angel just in time for the ships to get in. They blast all the way in, destroying the core of the Angel, and Eva Unit 2 lands safely on the top of the carrier. When we get to port finally, Ritsuko comments that both Asuka and Shinji were able to break their sync ratios, so they were able to sync up their thoughts and everything. It worked out, and that was probably what gave them that better control. But why would a sync ratio let you control something better? I mean, it went from not being able to move underwater to being able to move and accomplish the mission while underwater. Kensuke and Toji then take a moment to tease Shinji for being in that red plug suit that's apparently showing off his figure, so maybe there's some form-fitting. We then cut to Kaji in Ikari's big shadowy Kabbalah office and asking Ikari if the Angel attack has something to do with this, and he gives him the briefcase with the top secret all over it. And Ikari opens up the briefcase and we see a weird little embryo in it. I say little, but if this briefcase is as big as it looks, then it's actually quite a huge embryo. And Kaji comments that it's already regrown this much. And you're like, regrown from what? Well, usually embryos don't regrow. And then Kaji also asks, is this the keystone to human instrumentality, which we've only heard the super secret board talk about? So again, who Kaji? And then Ikari responds with, correct. So we get a question, is this the key to human instrumentality? And a clear answer, correct. And we are still not any closer to understanding what human instrumentality could be. He then follows it up by telling us that this is the first human. This is Adam. And as we zoom in on this embryo that we're being told is Adam, the first human and the key to instrumentality, we have no time to think about what that means because we cut immediately to school time. And at school, Koji and everyone are complaining about how that other pilot was a real female dog. Haha, joke, he's a bitch. We then are immediately met with the fact that Asuka is the new transfer student to the school. And for anyone who's been skipping the outros because it's Fly Me to the Moon and it's slow and it's got a moon in the picture, this one is different. This is actually Asuka's voice actress who is performing Fly Me to the Moon at the end of this episode. And that wraps up episode 8. We've got a new pilot, a new mystery character, a new Evangelion unit we can buy merch of. And before we get too deep, let's just go to that thing we just learned about. Adam exists in this world, and he's an embryo. And he's an embryo that's regrown. And I will grant you that briefcase was big, but we don't really get a clear size ratio as to like how big Adam was. But if he's any bigger than a few centimeters, that's way bigger than a first human embryo should be. What Adam? Or should I put why Adam? Because at this point, I'm convinced, looking at the size of that briefcase when you watch this in the series, that Adam is way bigger than a human embryo would be. Is Adam a giant? Is Adam some sort of other creature? What are we doing? We're told he's the first human. Why do I feel like he's so big? Why is he an embryo? What did he regrow from? We have a bunch of bullet points that we can add to what is Adam. We also get a follow-up answer to what is NERV, in that NERV is global. There is a NERV Germany location that has made Unit 2, and that's interesting. And just a reminder that we wrote down who Kaji, and that has a lot of bullet points of why is he working with Ikari? Why did he have Adam? Why does he know so much about what NERV knows? What's going on here with this Kaji fellow? And we also have an extra bullet point, like we talked about earlier, under what is an Ava, in the fact that we now have a production Ava. Is Asuka just bragging about this, or is this actually a fact that we need to sort of understand that hers is going to be different in some way? And just a reminder that while we have been putting together all of these mysteries, what are the angels? What are the Avas? What is NERV's plan? What is this human instrumentality? What is Adam? We've also been taking Shinji, a character who showed up, who had no family, was happy being alone, just following orders, who has now decided he's the pilot of his unit. He has made friends with his classmates. He is now smiling with his coworker, who seemed to have no sort of emotional reaction to anything. He also now has a mother figure, or probably more like a big sister figure, if we're going to be honest, because I don't know of most mothers that would drink beer for breakfast with their children. That's a bit of a weird thing, but we have this found family that's been growing around him. We have this firebrand character that's been injected into the series and has immediately shown us that she has this prideful mentality about who she is as a pilot and how she's in charge and control and wants to show off. And we're going to see this new exciting, bombastic character get injected into what has sort of been solidifying into a fairly stable household here. And we're looking forward now, as she is the new transfer student, to see her get injected into this cast that's been slowly solidifying their various roles, to see how Shinji can now grow and adapt with this new character in his life.